Happy Arvo. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing? Australia's weird geographical quirks. This sounded quite fascinating to me. Buy Ticket to Know. Check them out, link down below. 800,000 views. That's a lot of views. I'm thinking this is going to be quite interesting. Okay. Let's see. Why is this bar not going away?
Geographical quirks of Australia that you might not already know. These are the Australian states and territory.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You know, I was actually thinking today, my first idea for a video was to do an Australian states and territories quiz. Then I was like, there's like 8 of them. I don't know if that's good for a video. Like, if I didn't get a 100%, that would just be kind of pathetic. And half of them are like Northern Territory, Western Australia, you know, like, oh, gee.
Here's Tasmania, the only island state, ringed by ocean and cut off from the rest of the continent by the Bass Strait. Except it's not quite. If we zoom in, we can see that Tasmania and its northern neighbour state Victoria actually share a land border on this tiny and uninhabited island. The maritime border between the two states cuts right across Boundary Islet. This little islet border anomaly arose as the result of surveying errors and misinterpretations when repeatedly carving off sections of the colony of New South Wales into what are today Tasmania and Victoria. Boundary Islet is basically a chunk of rock that sometimes has some seals lounging on it. Speaking of disjointed borders...
Okay, that was really interesting. I certainly did not know that, and I probably don't know any of these after seeing that one. What that reminded me of is, did you know that there are parts... I'm trying to pull up a map here. I'm not smart enough to be able to speak and type at the same time, guys. Okay, bear with me. But did you know... the hell? Did you know that there are parts of Canada that are further south than parts of California? Now, I don't know if that's as profound to an Australian as an American. But, you know, of course, you think of California, I mean, it touches the bottom of the country border, in the, you know, USA. And it's, you know, nice warm weather. It's pretty south. Canada's pretty cold. It's pretty up there, north. But there's parts of Canada, and you can see this right here. You know, Toronto, right next to Michigan, it reaches down into here. And this is actually where a lot of Canadians live, you know. And it's so far south that if you draw that line, it's actually more south than the top boundary, the top border of California. Who cares? No one asked. Let's move on.
The Australian capital...
This isn't about America, okay? Typical American making everything about himself. Okay, just kidding. Let's move on.
Territory, or ACT, was carved out of New South Wales so the federal government could have a territory of its own from which to govern.
Right.
But they felt
kind of like Washington, D.C.
strongly about the federal government also having access to
once again, making everything about myself. Oh my God.
a seaport. So instead of making the ACT somewhere on the coast, they just annexed another small territory, the southern peninsula of Jervis Bay. Jervis Bay is a separate territory from the ACT. But when it comes to federal elections, the people of Jervis Bay vote in the electorate of Fenner, which is centered in the ACT. And
that's
in terms of geographical
shout out to those people.
Works of electorates, spare a thought for the people of Norfolk Island, who vote in the ACT electorate of Bean, 1,900 kilometres away. But that isn't even the furthest removed local representation in the country. The electorate of Lingiari encompasses the red centre of Australia, the tropical top end of the Northern Territory, minus the urban areas of Darwin and some of Palmerston, and Christmas Island, which is 2,500 kilometres away. And there are some even more widely distributed pockets of Lingiari. Maybe it needs a video of its own. While we're on the topic of...
How did I not even know this name, Lingiari? Lingiari. Like... Lingiari. How have I never heard that? Like, is that... It's just the Northern Territory, but with some caveats, which he basically just said, I guess. Interesting.
It needs a video
Lingiari.
of its own. While we're on the topic of the outback, Australia is home to some really large pieces of land that are used for cattle
The biggest golf course in the world.
stations. The largest is Anna Creek Station,
Right.
which is the largest cattle station in the world.
Ridiculous,
It's over
really.
23,000 square kilometers, which is a larger land area than 50 of the world's countries. And it's also true that the country of Brunei used to own a station in Australia that had a larger land area than Brunei itself, although it sold the station in 2018. Back to the state border
I'm not even gonna lie. I don't even know. I never heard of Brunei before. Maybe that's not weird. I don't know. Brunei?
land area than Brunei itself, although it sold the station in 2018. Back to the state borders now. And
Alright.
while Australian Aboriginal people have of course been living on the land with
You know what? I just decided, since a lot of this video right here is about the states, and because I said, you know, I was gonna take the Australian state quiz, let's go for it, guys. Let's just go for it real quick in the middle of this video. Okay, South Australia. Gee.
Western Australia, Northern Territory.
Oh, shoot. You see, this is really
Queensland.
difficult, guys. Now, Queensland and New South Wales could mix me up.
New South Wales,
But did it? No. You know why? Because New South Wales has South in it. And I know it's not Victoria.
Victoria, Australian Capital Territory,
Canberra. Which I now know also is over here, apparently.
Tasmania,
Ah. Oh, that's the end of the video, guys. 30-second video. All right. Moving on.
their own boundaries for tens of thousands of years. When white colonists tried to divide it up, the results were imperfect. Here's the border of Victoria, New South Wales, and South Australia. Looks like it should be a pretty neat line, right? If we zoom in, we can see that the borders are actually a bit of a mess. Victoria juts out to the northwest. The river boundary moves from being along the southern bank to being in the middle of the river.
You know what, to be honest, this makes me think of? It makes me think of that really messed up idea that, like, if you have a border, say you have a border that's a mile long, but then if you zoomed in on it and every meter it went like this, that would mean that border is like 2 miles long. Wow. Profound. It's profound.
And the intersection of the three states is in the middle of the river. So why isn't this just a nice line? The 141st meridian was originally surveyed to be the eastern border of South Australia. However, it was incorrectly placed about 3.5 kilometres west of where it actually lies. When the mistake was discovered, New South Wales decided it was fair enough and established the
Fair dinkin'.
accurate meridian as the border.
That's fair dinkin', guys. I love
Victoria
that.
kind of went,
No war, just fair dinkin'. Move on.
yeah, no, we like the border where it is, leaving us with this mess today. And Australia has another line that looks straight, but it's actually not. The borders of the Northern Territory, South Australia, and Western Australia. This north-south line cutting across the entire continent looks dead straight.
But if you zoom in, it actually goes.
But if we zoom in, we can again see there's a tiny perturbation. This deviation is only 127 meters long,
No way.
and was of course the result of another surveying error 100 years
What is that in freedom units?
ago.
I heard someone say freedom units like sarcastically once, and I say it way too much now.
The border was intended to be approximately on the 129th meridian, so instead of measuring from one end of the continent to the other, 2 points were picked at either end that were pretty close to the meridian, and a north-south line was drawn from each point. Except, of course, the points were not exactly on the meridian, so the north-south lines didn't match up. Instead of fixing it, they just drew an east-west line to join the two north-south lines up.
Fair
Could they
dinkin'.
have fixed it? For sure. But they had actually already agreed not to worry too much about little slip-ups like this. They'd agreed that an academic result was not to be sought after with a high and fanciful degree of accuracy.
No way. Wow. What's that quote? You know, good enough. That's what we strive for. At this company, we strive for good enough. That's Australia here. It's good enough.
Century-old way of saying, she'll be right. And just a couple for my fellow Victorians who, like me, thought they had a good mental map of Australia in their head, but maybe I don't. Adelaide is north of Canberra.
Okay, that's not that profound to me because I never thought about that, but I bet some of you guys are like, oh my god, Adelaide's north.
And Perth is north of Sydney. These realizations actually blew my mind.
That's a little bit surprising.
Well,
Perth is north of Sydney. I'm sure to you guys that's a lot more interesting.
that's it. I hope there was something for everyone in this video.
Yeah, so even some random seppo found things interesting about the video, sir. Thank you so much. Check them out. Ticket to Know, link down below. That's TTK for short. I had a miniature stroke when you said Jervis Bay. Please, my guy. It might be spelled Jervis, but it's said Jarvis. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are doing good. And I'll see you tomorrow. I hope.